Of Time in the River, A Glimpse into Pine Bluff and Jefferson County History is a video production of the Jefferson County Historical Society and was underwritten by a grant from the Pine Bluff Jefferson County Historical Museum. Established in 1980, the museum occupies Old Union Station at 4th Avenue and State Street and introduces thousands of visitors yearly to our city's historic legacy. With a wide variety of exhibits ranging from Native American and Civil War artifacts to the decorative arts, the museum truly contains something for everyone. We cordially invite you to step back in time by visiting the museum, a place where history truly comes alive. You know, it's often the case that the history we are most likely to overlook is the history that's closest to us. And in the case of Pine Bluff, that's a real shame. For instance, did you know that a bloody Civil War battle took place right here? Or that a large lake was once located here, and the only way to get across it was on a haunted bridge? Or that our original cemetery was located here, and that some of the graves are still intact? Or that our courthouse almost fell into the Arkansas River? Or that the city was once flooded so badly that one could go fishing on Main Street? Or that UAPB, the second oldest public college in Arkansas, once stood in a single building right here? Or that this well-known Pine Bluff restaurant was once the site of Pine Bluff High School? The history of our town is a lot more interesting than you might think. Come along and judge for yourself. Pine Bluff's founding father was a man named Joseph Bonne. He was part French and part Quapaw Indian. In 1819, he left the Bonne Reservation and paddled up the Arkansas River in search of higher ground. When he reached a high bluff covered with pine trees 5 miles upstream, he decided to make a home. His cabin became the nucleus of what would become Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And the first county court met there April 19, 1830. This is the earliest map of Pine Bluff that we know about. The date is 1836, and the town was still quite small. One can see how small by looking at its outline on this aerial map. Notice that the Arkansas River ran right behind the courthouse. By 1868, the date of this map, things had changed. Remember, on the first map there were 2 streets and a block of buildings between the river and courthouse? But look what had happened by 1868. The river had eaten away Front Street and most of the block, and it wouldn't stop there. By 1908, we would have big problems with the river, but we'll get to that in a minute. Notice that in those days, the streets had different names. In 1887, they were given their present names, all but Main and Barracu, which kept their original names. Also, notice the Methodist Church at 4th and Main. Here's a picture of that church, one of the oldest Pine Bluff photographs that we have. Here is the corner where the church stood. Behind it, in the area you're seeing, was the town's first cemetery. When Bellwood Cemetery was opened in 1860, many of the people buried there were reinterred or reburied, but not all of them. Some are still at rest beneath the streets and buildings of downtown Pine Bluff. Another interesting feature is Harding Lake, which you see on this 1868 map. This is the lake from which Lakeside School and Lakeside Methodist Church take their names. It was at its widest point in this area where the Civic Center is today, and gradually narrowed as it stretched westward across the town. Notice the house of Dexter Harding shown on the map. Harding operated a grist mill and sawmill near his home, and he decided to use the sawdust from the mill to build a bridge spanning the lake from south to north. Because of the foundation on which it was built, the bridge was never firm underfoot and, according to legends, was the scene of weird sights and sounds at night as the vapors rose from the lake. Yes, a haunted bridge just happened to be the only practical way to enter and leave the town from the south. Incidentally, Dexter's home was torn down in 1969, but the lumber was marked and saved. The house was later reconstructed and stands west of the courthouse today. It serves as Pine Bluff's Visitor Center. In the 1880s, a channel was dredged in the middle of Harding Lake to drain it. That channel, Harding Drain, is all that remains of the old lake today. The lake may have died, but the Arkansas River kept right on a-comin'. By December 1908, it had channeled its way right up to the back of the courthouse. Something had to be done, and soon, otherwise the courthouse and perhaps the business district would be destroyed by the river. A levee had been built on the north side of the river in early 1908, and the current was forced against the south bank of the river. The only solution was to break the levee to divert the current away from the city. Federal officials told the Pine Bluff delegation it could not be done legally on such short notice. The Pine Bluff group soon made the decision that the town must be saved legally or illegally. A team of volunteers, 3 black and 3 white men with explosives, traveled to the north shore on a steam ferry, and at 9:40 p.m. December the 2nd, 1908, a series of explosions shook Pine Bluff. The river flowed through the levee and the city was saved. To protect them from prosecution, the names of the men who blew the levee were kept a secret for over 60 years. 20 years later, however, the river would exact its revenge on Pine Bluff. The flood of 1927 was the worst in our history. This disaster was by no means confined to Pine Bluff. Any town located in the lower valley of the Mississippi River or its tributaries felt the river's fury in April of 1927. The levees of that day were simply inadequate to hold back the raging waters. You're looking at photographs taken at various locations in Pine Bluff during the 1927 flood. But not even a flood can stop an avid fisherman, however. A.B. Marcus caught this gar on Main Street. Our town did not escape the fury of the Civil War. Federal troops under the command of Colonel Powell Clayton occupied Pine Bluff on September 17, 1863. They came from Little Rock, also under federal control, at the request of local citizens anxious to protect lives and property from the danger of lawless guerrilla bands. Clayton used several different headquarters during his stay in Pine Bluff. One was this small house, then located at 2nd and Beach, and now at 714 West 4th Avenue. On October 25, 1863, Confederate forces under the command of General John Marmaduke attempted to dislodge the Union troops from the town. Clayton's men fortified the courthouse square with cotton bales, and a bloody battle followed. The Union fortifications held firm, and Marmaduke withdrew his men at day's end. Pine Bluff remained under Union occupation for the remainder of the war. Damage from the battle was considerable, and many homes, churches, and business establishments were damaged in the fighting. Among them was this home of Marcus Lafayette Bell, built in 1852. The Bell home was Pine Bluff's first brick mansion. During the battle, a Union cannonball fired from the court square went through a second-story bedroom and rolled across the floor. This is the house today. It is hard for us to imagine today how isolated early Pine Bluffians were from the outside world. Roads were few in number and were little more than rough lanes through the wilderness. During periods of heavy rain and high water, they became impassable. The main highway in those early days was the Arkansas River, and the means of conveyance was the steamboat. Before the railroads, they provided the only way for farmers to market their crops and the most convenient way for passengers to travel. Pine Bluff Steamboat Landing was a beehive of activity and excitement in those early days. The landing moved around a bit over the years due to the chronic problem of crumbling banks. The first known landing was at the foot of what is now Tennessee Street. In 1867, an attempt was made to build a wharf with a roadway running down from the high bluff. The pilings were washed away by the river, and the landing was relocated in the rear of the courthouse. By 1888, the landing had been moved to the foot of Alabama Street. Steamboat travel could be extremely dangerous, however. Boiler explosions were common, and some loss of life occurred. Sunken logs and low water were other problems. This boat, the Legal Tender, went down in 1876 as a result of hitting a sunken log in the river near Swan Lake. Navigational problems on the river would finally become a thing of the past, but not until 1970. The McClellan Kerr Navigation Project, with its 17 locks and dams, made the river navigable for commercial vessels all the way to Tulsa. It has also made possible our present-day Port of Pine Bluff with its slackwater harbor, an important factor in our city's industrial growth. As important as river transportation was to early Pine Bluffians, it was soon eclipsed by the railroad. In 1873, the railroad reached the town, giving our local cotton farmers direct access to the Mississippi River and the New Orleans market. This railroad would change ownership and later become known as the Missouri Pacific. Today, it is the Union Pacific. This drawing was done by a black Pine Bluffian named Henry J. Lewis. Born a slave, Lewis overcame the handicap of a crippled left hand and taught himself to draw. His sketches and political cartoons appeared in the leading magazines of the day. These Lewis sketches were published in Harper's Magazine in 1879. We got a second railroad in 1883 when the Paramore came to town. It would later become known as the Cotton Belt. This photo shows our train depot, the Union Station, being built in 1906. This is a picture of the Cotton Belt roundhouse where the old steam locomotives were serviced. Steam locomotive 819 was built at the Cotton Belt shops in 1942. When it was retired from service, the engine was given to the city and placed on display in Oakland Park. The Cotton Belt Railroad Historical Society was formed in October 1983, and on December the 1st, 1983, the 819 was taken by the society to the Cotton Belt shops for rebuilding. In April 1986, the locomotive made its first trip to Fordyce. The society has established the Arkansas Railroad Museum in the building where 819 and other equipment is stored. The museum is open to the public to view railroad artifacts. As Pine Bluff grew, other types of transportation became necessary. This is Wiley Jones. Born a slave like H.J. Lewis, he invested money from his barber business wisely and soon became wealthy and politically powerful. He had the finest saloon in town, located next to the present-day Bird Store for Men at 205 Main. In 1886, Jones opened the city's first streetcar line. The cars were pulled on tracks by Mexican donkeys. The car barns and stables were located near 17th and Main Street on the southeast corner. Jones developed this area into a park. Jones Park even featured a horse racing track, since breeding racehorses was Jones's hobby. Baseball games and bicycle races took place at the park. Mule power gave way to electricity in 1902 as trolley cars made their debut on the streets of Pine Bluff. The tracks ran down the center of the city's main thoroughfares and were paved over when buses replaced the trolleys in the 1930s. The old tracks and brick pavement occasionally become visible even today when the pavement wears through. Here we see some of the old electric trolley cars. With the arrival of the automobile age, electric trolley cars soon became a thing of the past. Dirt and gravel roads gave way to pavement, and once again, Pine Bluff was on the cutting edge of progress. Arkansas's first concrete highway, the Dollar Way, was completed in 1914. It extended northward from Pine Bluff to the Pulaski County line, a distance of 22.2 miles. The name Dollar Way derives from the fact that it cost $1 per linear foot to build. The highway was financed by a special tax paid by landowners along the right-of-way. The road was 9 feet wide with gravel shoulders on either side in case a motorist should meet a car coming the other way. The Dollar Way became quite a tourist attraction for Pine Bluff. It was not uncommon for early auto enthusiasts to ship their cars on the railroad to Pine Bluff in order to experience the thrill of motoring on a paved roadway. The old roadbed still exists and is still visible in several locations as seen here. Our town has never been short of car buffs going back even to the earliest days. Here is a picture of the Pine Bluff Auto Club assembled in 1906 in front of the courthouse for a 3-day trip to Little Rock. A day going, a day to sightsee and to make repairs, and a day coming back. Incidentally, one of the cars in the picture was owned by F.G. Smart. Sound familiar? Public education began in Pine Bluff in 1869 in this building. It stood on 6th Avenue between Laurel and Beach Streets, where this building now stands. Called the City High School, it actually served grades 1 through 12. The building was partially destroyed by fire in 1893 and had to be rebuilt and enlarged. While the rebuilding was going on, the high school moved into the building at 721 Pine Street, originally constructed in 1886 as an elementary school. The building was torn down in 1913 and a new elementary school building was constructed. This is that building as it looks today, from Pine Street Elementary School to Pine Bluff High School, to Pine Street Elementary School again, and finally to its present identity, proving that historic buildings can serve modern commercial purposes. Pine Bluff was growing rapidly, and eventually a larger school building was needed. That need was filled by this imposing building. It was built in 1907 and later named for John Allen, Superintendent of Schools, from 1923 to 1941. The Allen Building was later joined by 2 additional buildings. This is the Junius Jordan Building, finished in 1918 and named for the man who preceded Allen as superintendent from 1902 to 1923. Finished in 1925, this building rounded out the campus. It served as the junior high school and was named for President Woodrow Wilson. All 3 buildings were torn down in 1975-76 when the present buildings were constructed. The story of public education in Pine Bluff's African American community is an inspiring one. Struggling with the well-known obstacles that went with the institutionalized segregation of the era, a system was produced that was second to none in our state. Pine Bluff's first black school was established in 1865 by the American Missionary Society at 2nd and Linden, where this house now stands. In 1886, a man named Joseph Merrill sold the school district land for a new school building. Located here on the north side of Pullen Street, between Linden and Mulberry, the school looked like this in 1892. A student body is posed in the foreground. This building burned in 1913. The Reverend Lewis Johnson, a black Presbyterian minister from Pennsylvania, came to Pine Bluff in 1885 to establish a church which started a school for children of freed slaves in 1888. This private school was known as the Richard Allen Institute. It was located at West 9th and Hickory Streets and operated until the 1930s. In 1894, the school had 220 students and 8 teachers. This is the Colored Industrial Institute. Founded by Father John M. Lucy in 1889, it served as a vocational school for black children. The school stood in the block bounded by 15th and 16th Avenues and State and Alabama Streets, the block where St. Peter's Catholic Church and School are presently located. An exhibit of the students' accomplishments consisting of 10 bound volumes was submitted to the 1893 Chicago World's Fair and won a blue ribbon. This photo was part of that exhibit. What we now know as UAPB began in September 1875 as Branch Normal College under the leadership of this man, Joseph Carter Corbin. The school was originally housed in one building at 2nd and Oak. In 1881, land for a new campus was acquired between 2nd and 4th Avenue with Plum Street as the eastern boundary. The building shown here is the women's dormitory, completed in 1888. It housed 35 students. Room and board was $2 a week, payable in advance. The building was torn down when the school was moved in 1929, a final time, to its present location on University Drive. Here is the graduating class of 1903. Patriotism was the order of the day as the United States went to war against Germany in the War to End All Wars in 1917. Parades were held to sell Liberty bonds for money to fight the war. The Home Guards, a company of men too old for active service, led a parade to celebrate the victory over Germany on Armistice Day, November the 11th, 1918. The history of Pine Bluff aviation is also quite interesting. Our first airport was built in 1927, 2 miles north of the city on U.S. Highway 79 in the area shown here. It was named Tony Field for Mayor William L. Tony, an aviation enthusiast who promoted its construction. Tony Field included hangars, an administration building, and a clubhouse, as you see here. Pine Bluff eventually outgrew Tony Field. In 1941, a larger facility, Grider Field, was opened southeast of the city. The new airport became a flight training school and was appropriated for military use during World War II. It was named for John McGavick Grider, a World War I flying hero from Arkansas. Approximately 10,000 World War II pilots received primary training here before it was closed in 1944. It was reopened for commercial air traffic after the war and has continued to service Pine Bluff since that time. Pine Bluff has never been the same since World War II. In addition to Grider Field Flying School, the U.S. government selected the city for the location of an arsenal to manufacture incendiary and smoke bombs, grenades, and other munitions. Ground was broken December the 2nd, 1941, and the first munitions were produced July the 20th, 1942. The peak number of workers was 9,000, about 4,000 of which were women. The arsenal still provides employment for over 1,000 persons. Another change was wrought on the Pine Bluff scene when International Paper Company started building a new plant east of the city in 1957. At the same time, Dirk's Lumber Industries built a smaller paper mill north of Pine Bluff. International employs approximately 1,400 persons, and Gaylord Container now owns the Dirk's Mill. In addition to paper, Gaylord also produces bags. In 1968, a new civic center was built on East 8th Street, containing the public library, art center, city hall, police station, municipal court, and fire station number 1. Designed by Edward Durrell Stone, an internationally famous architect born in Fayetteville, Arkansas, the civic center is one of the showplaces of the city. Just east of the center is the Pine Bluff Convention Center, which was completed in 1976. Ringling Brothers' Barnum and Bailey Circus was the first performance in the center on July the 4th, 1976. Yes, Pine Bluff has seen a lot of change over the years, but one landmark has remained. We are looking at it right now. The Jefferson County Courthouse has anchored Main Street for over 150 years, and maybe more than any other building, has come to symbolize our city. It looked like this in the beginning, 1840 to be exact. It was the first brick building in town, and the cost of construction was $5,300. Perhaps the price tag wasn't such a bargain after all, because by the mid-1850s, the building was cracking and in danger of falling down. The courthouse was rebuilt in 1856. The cupola was damaged during the Battle of Pine Bluff and removed in 1866, leaving the building with this appearance. 4 years later, however, the cupola was rebuilt as shown in this H.J. Lewis sketch from Harper's Magazine. The building was remodeled in 1890 and again in 1906 to its present-day design. As one can see, the familiar clock tower has replaced the cupola. This building stood with only minor modifications and additions until fire destroyed it in 1976. Jefferson County voters chose to rebuild at the same site and to replicate as nearly as possible the design of the old building. Construction on this building, our present courthouse, was completed May the 8th, 1980. We hope you have enjoyed this brief journey through Pine Bluff's past, but we've only scratched the surface. As Pine Bluffians, we have a heritage to be proud of. Too often we forget that. After all, the past is a living thing. William Faulkner said it best. In the South, the past isn't history. It isn't even the past.